Hi, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to do a gearbox oil change on my Audi S4 2011. It has the S-tronic gearbox fitted. I'm going to follow a step-by-step process showing you how to drain out the old transmission fluid, change the internal and external filters, refill the gearbox again, and then carry out the all-important warm-up and level check. I'm going to be using ramps for this job, but it is possible to use axle stands. See the link above for how to jack up your car and use axle stands safely. Whew! So, those of you that watched my videos before will know that I have a Hamer lift. And they're a great piece of kit, but they're manual. So obviously that film that you just saw was me lifting it up. It takes about 15 minutes and you get a nice little warm-up ready for getting down to the real work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is getting this gearbox under tray off of the car, and as you can see there's quite a lot of these Torx drive screws, so these are all T20 Torx bit required to get them loose. So you can see a few at the back here, so and then as we move along you'll see that there's these clips here. And I have a special tool for getting them loose. It's almost like a little plastic crowbar that you use for getting interior trim loose, and I found that works really well. And then as we work our way forward, and then it looks like there's just some normal cross point screws there, so I'll just start removing them, and that's just going to give us access to the gearbox. Okay, so it turned out there were 3 of those Torx screws. Now we're on those other fittings I talked to you about, which are like the plastic push fits. And there's 2 of these. You can see one of them's quite near the front wheel there on the left hand side. And then another on the right over here. This is a little plastic crowbar that I was talking about. So quite useful tools really. You know, you can just kind of wedge it down behind there and then lever that out. Hard to do one-handed though, so I'll stop the video and you'll have to take my word for it. Okay, so that's those 2 plastic fittings, and so now just at the front you can just see these screws, and they're just like a cross point. Sorry about the light on this. Okay, so that's those 3 undone. So I should be able to remove this this under tray now. Okay, so that's what it looks like with the under tray removed. And what you can see here is the sump for the gearbox. So if you look here, then you can see the sump plug for draining the gearbox. The level plug is up there. So that's where you refill out. It's quite near the external filter. In a minute we're going to drop the pan off of the transmission, but first it's necessary to remove the cross brace. So I've already removed the bolts here, but there's 6 bolts that hold the cross brace in place. And there's 3 on the left hand side, and then of course 3 on the right. And here are the bolts. Okay, so when I'm draining out any fluids, I like to use like a bucket with measurements on. So it's just like a bit of a sense check really. So I've got the bucket positioned underneath. Up above I'm just going to go ahead and take out that drain plug. It's worth mentioning that once the initial bit of fluid came out, then I just went ahead and removed the filling plug that's around the side I showed you a couple of minutes ago. And the reason for that is that that'll let air in now. And so you can see that it's a much better stream of fluid coming out. The oil draining out has slowed down to just a trickle now. It's time to turn attention to this external filter. So you can see the filter housing there. And it's actually got like a bit of a hex head shape on the end of it. And this gently breaks that free. Oh yeah, quite easily. And so now it'll just unscrew by hand. A lot of people might have seen that there's a part number for replacing this cover that I'm removing, or end cap, but to be honest they're quite robust, so you just need a new O-ring for it, and that normally comes with the new filter element that you buy. And what you can see now is the external filter element, so just pull that out. Okay, so now we're ready to drop the pan. There's quite a lot of bolts all around the outside, as you can see. And what I tend to do is I just kind of crack them all loose at first, and then I go around and remove them after. I realise I don't always take a lot of time to talk about tools that you'll use a lot while you're doing this sort of car work. But as you can see, this is just a small quarter drive socket set, and all I'll do is I'll use the ratchet, the extension, and then the little adapter which allows me to put that Torx 20 into the end of it. Just going to go around and break each one of these loose. Okay, so I've got them all cracked loose now, so I'm literally just going to come along with the extension on its own, and then just spin each one of these out. Obviously just work my way around and remove all the bolts. So now that the pan's down, just a couple of things to talk about. So the first is that you can see the internal filter here, and the other is that where the pan came down you can kind of see these dirty edges, and it's worth cleaning those up before you put the pan back again with a new gasket, just to make sure none gets under the edge and stops it sealing properly. So obviously clean that and be really careful not to get any dirt into the bottom of the gearbox, so wiping outwards all the time. And then the next thing is about the pan itself. It seems to have these kind of like strips of magnets here. With a nice clean cloth, it's worth cleaning up this. And you can see the old gasket on here, so I'll peel that off and then I'll clean all of that surface finish as well. Again, making sure that no debris or dirt ends up inside the pan. You know, you want it clean as a whistle, really. Okay, so the old filter should just pop loose, and then you put a replacement one in, and it's just a push fit into there, really. I've got the filter down in the pan now, draining, and there was some extra fluid in it. But if I put it back to kind of where it was, then can you see where the orange seal is up there? Well, this end of the filter kind of pushed into that. So when I removed it, I actually just kind of pulled it towards me, and it does pop out really easily. So that seal should have come out with the old filter. So I'm just going to reach up and take that one out. So I'm just letting you know about this, because obviously if you took out the old filter and just went to put the new one in, you may not realise that this should have come out with it. Always worth a little double check on the bench. So you can see the old filter versus the new one. This is the orange seal that I mentioned stayed up in the gearbox, but you get a new one off. So so that's in place already. And then interestingly, there's just a little O-ring here. The new one doesn't have one of these on it, as you can see. So I'm just going to pull that off and transfer it across. I'm just turning our attention to the pan. I've got the new gasket here, so it's worth just kind of checking, sense checking that that's going to fit okay. And then I'll go ahead and clean up this pan now, as we discussed. Okay, as you can see, my old socks have done the job, so it's pretty clean in there now. And then I've got the new gasket here. And one thing to point out about the new gasket is, can you see the little rubber locating pegs? So there's actually 4 of those, 2 on each side, and then that's what actually holds them into position. So one of the pegs is just here, and there's a hole for it there, and so it makes it really easy to position this, and holds it in the right position then. Okay, so we've got the new filter ready to go. And then you remember me saying that the part with the spout and the orange seal on it just pushes in there, so I'll kind of come from the back of the gearbox and up into position, and then I'll lift it up. Okay, so I've got the new filter in place. It was a little bit more awkward than I thought, but we got there. And then I'm just going to clean these edges up as we discussed, just all the way around. And then I've got the new pan, which we cleaned up earlier, all ready to go on. Okay, so now I'm just putting all of the bolts back into the pan, just finger tight at the moment. Okay, so just the last one going in now, by hand, finger tight. Okay, so I'm going to go and torque up the bolts now. So this is a little mini torque wrench that I've got, and I've set it to 10 Newton meters on here, and then it has a little adapter which allows me to put the Torx fitting on. There it is there. Okay, so just going to follow a pattern. So starting off with the first bolt at this corner. So that click tells me that's 10 Newton meters. And then I'm just going to do the opposite side, and then I'll move up to here, and then I'll go opposite again, and then I'll probably do a middle one and a cross, and so you get the picture. As long as you're trying to pick opposite bolts, torquing them up to the same amount, then that will make the pan you know, tighten up evenly. Okay, so I've torqued them all up now, but what I'm going to do now is just go around with the torque wrench one more time. And then just check them all, really. And the reason for this is because you've been kind of going crisscross across the pan to tighten it up evenly, then there's the chances you might have missed a bolt. And also when you torque up bolts that are next to each other, sometimes you just flex the metal a little bit, and the original one isn't as tight as you expected it to be. So no need to go kind of crisscross pattern this time, but I'm just going to go in and just check them one at a time, and in fact count them off as well, so I know that there's 15 of them. I'm ready to put the sump plug back in again now. So as you can see, I've cleaned up the outside of the pan where the copper sealing ring is going to sit up against. Then our friend, the 10mm Allen key, is back. Okay, so regarding tightening, if you remember, I use quite a long Allen key. And what that means is you don't really need to put that much torque onto it. So there will be a torque setting for this, and I'll, if I can find it, then I'll put it in the description for this video. But I just tighten it up nice and snug, and don't go too crazy. And that's it. Okay, so I'm going to start filling up now. So if you remember, the level plug is up there. So that's where you refill at. It's quite near the external filter. And there's a couple of ways you can do this actually. You can either refill using this little pump. So I have a little hand pump, you see. So obviously the professional garages, they usually have like a big contraption which has an electric pump. But I just have this hand pump here. So you literally just suck the oil into it by pulling out on the lever, and then obviously just inject it up there, you know, into that level fill plug. And the other way that I've seen done is you run a hose from above, from the when you open the bonnet, put a funnel on the end of it, and then run a hose down and into the level fill plug there, and you can just fill it from the top, and it'll just fill by gravity. Okay, it's a little bit hard to show, but I have a bit of hose on the end of this pump, so that's sucking the oil up, and then there we go. And then I'm just going to get the hose up into that level fill plug, and then I just inject the oil up into there. And the idea is that you keep putting the oil in, and we know that it's in the region of 5 litres until it starts to come out of that level fill plug. Okay, so just as I got the 5 litres of oil in, it started to run back out of the level plug, so I knew that I was in the right ballpark for fluid level. For what I'll do now is I'll start the car and I'll step it through its different gear selections. But just a bit of a word of warning is up here, then the exhaust is up in this area too. When I access that level plug to top off the fluid, then just have to be careful not to touch the exhaust there. Okay, so time to start it up, you know, get that fluid moving around the gearbox. So let's have a look at that. So currently it's in park, and I'll give it just a few seconds of that, and then I'll just step it through. So a few seconds, maybe 10 seconds of reverse. So I'm not going to keep videoing, but usually I'll step through and wait at least 10 seconds, say 3 or 4 times. Okay, so just as an update, the 5 litre container is now empty, so I added just the last remnants from that. And as you can see, I added from this 1 litre container, I've added another 600 or 650 mil up into the gearbox. So I've put the level plug back in. So now what I'm going to do is run the car up to temperature. So ideally you would take it for a run now. But because I've got the ramps and they're manual ramps, they take me about 20 minutes to lower and lift. What I know from experience is about 30 minutes of running just stationary will get it up to about the right temperature. So you can use a infrared heat gun, and I have done that before. But anyway, the purpose of this is now a level adjust. You'll run it for a certain period of time, and then you'll undo the level plug, and then just let any excess run out. You wait until it just slows down to a steady stream, you know, just almost like a dripping tap, and then you put the plug back in. So you don't have to wait until you know, nothing's coming out of it all. It's probably better if there's just a little bit of excess in. Okay, so sorry about the noise. Running the engine and the gearbox, of course, will be spinning to get it up to temperature for that level check. But also what I think I'll do is, if you remember, there's like a brace underneath the gearbox which I dropped down earlier. Well, now that we're just on the level check and I'm not going to be putting, I don't need quite as good an access, then it's a good opportunity to get that back in place again. So what I've got is just a bit of nut lock, which will just you know, fix these in place so that they don't rattle loose. And I'm going to apply just a little bit to the thread, so it's a little blob about the size of a pea onto each one of them, and then I'm going to fit that brace back up to the underneath of the car. 18mm socket onto that. So I'll just get all of these started before I start nipping them up. Three on each side, if you remember. So just getting the last of the bolts tightened up with the ratchet. Okay, so I've had the car running for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. So that should have it nicely up to temperature. So now I'm going to take that level fill plug out just to see if any excess runs out. So this is just a level check now. But bear in mind the fluid will be hot now. So you want to be careful not to get that on your hands. You may laugh, but I've got some marigolds. So when I'm doing things like this, I get these gloves on, and then I make sure that I'm not underneath it, so it doesn't drip on me. So remember what I said about the exhaust though, because now it's really close. Just carefully removing this plug now. And there's just a small amount of excess running out. So I'm going to go put that plug back in now. So now this time, I'm going to get this level plug nice and tight with my long wrench because we're done. So all I'm going to do now is clean that up and put the under tray back on. Okay, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found that video useful, and if you did, then please consider subscribing and you'll see my new content as it's released. All of the tools and products that I used are in the description below, so go check it out if you want to learn more. There's also a link in the description, so if there's anyone you'd like to share this video with, then please feel free to do so. That's it for now, thanks for joining, catch you next time.